Tragedy strikes the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. An officer is killed in the line of duty after responding to a domestic call. Today, we're reflecting on Officer Rod Bradway and talking about a number of public safety issues with city leaders. Plus, our political insiders weigh in on the politics of Washington and a possible government shutdown. It's all coming up on this edition of Indianapolis This Week.
From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Good morning, I'm Rafael Sanchez. It's been a sad week for those who serve in public safety and in our community. An officer was killed while serving in the line of duty. Officer Rod Bradway was killed after responding to a domestic call early Friday morning. Also happening this week, the proposal for the Department of Public Safety goes before the City County Council. Some of the top goals include making the budget more efficient and hiring more officers. Joining us now is Council President Maggie Lewis, a Democrat who represents the 7th District. Welcome to our program. Your thoughts on the passing of Officer Bradway?
You know, when I received the call this morning, my heart was really saddened. It's a reminder that we have these men and women who go out every day to ensure that we are safe, and they put their lives on the line for us every single day, and so my heart was really heavy.
The council right now is taking on the issue of public safety, tackling what is a major budgetary issue. Where will we see that go? Because there's a major call right now for more police officers. The FOP says we need 400. The Public Safety Director's report says 731. Where are we? What do we need? We
need more officers, and we can debate on that number, but I think it's time for us to, you know, put our differences aside, come together and agree that we need officers on the more officers on the street right now.
So what is then the solution? Because if you talk to the mayor's office, they say that the Democratic caucus is not being helpful. If you talk to the Democratic caucus, you'll say that the mayor is not being helpful. Where is that middle ground?
And so this is the thing. It's all about compromising. And I think at the end of the day, there's going to be things in that budget that the Democrats are going to be happy about, and there's going to be things in there that we're not going to be happy. And the same for the Republican side of the party. And so it really is about compromising, and both sides have to be able to give and take. When we talk about the budget and how we're going to fund these officers, you know, the budget was presented to us with the homestead credit in there, and my colleagues had said on several times that we do not want to raise taxes. And so that's kind of been the sticking point for us as we're talking about how do we fund officers. But my caucus also believe that there's other pots of dollars that we can tap into to ensure that we get additional officers on the street ASAP.
So let's talk about that, because one plan is to sort of this homestead credit, the $9 million that may be able to fund maybe up to 100 officers over 2 years. Why not? That sounds good. Why not do that?
That sounds good. Maybe because if you're not a homeowner, you don't see an increase. It's a tax increase on homeowners. And we hear every day that people are tired of being taxed and these fees. And so, you know, it may only be $24, you know, additional, but if you put that on top of other fees, some households cannot afford that. And so I think it's important that the members of the City County Council consider all of those things before we say it's just $22 or $25, because we know families are hurting.
So what is the Lewis plan? You are the leader of that caucus.
The Lewis plan.
The Lewis plan. You are the leader of that caucus. What do you believe needs to happen to be able to fund, because you need them, right?
Absolutely.
Right, so we understand that we need the officers.
We definitely need the officers.
It's going to cost money. So how do we get there? How do we get there?
And so I believe that there's dollars that we can tap into, whether it's Rebuild Indy funds, the fiscal stability funds. I understand that the mayor's office is even considering to allow us to use some of the dollars from the homestead credit to pay for those officers. I'm willing to have that conversation and continue that conversation, and I'm very optimistic that we will agree, because the one thing that we all do agree on at this point is that we need those extra officers ASAP.
You received pushback on the Rebuild Indy funds. The mayor's office has said, no, we're not going to do that. Is there any other way that you can see beyond raising taxes or finding some other cash to get these officers hired?
So we can look at additional cuts, and we have this.
Where will we cut?
We can look at all different departments, you know, and then I'm convinced that the budget is not balance. We can look at all the different departments and take a look at what's listed in there. We can look at that $80 million that's available in the fiscal stability funds, and maybe we tap into that. Like I said, I'm not against coming to the table and putting all options on the table, but as far as that homestead credit, once again, my colleagues have said over and over, we're not prepared, we're not ready to do that. But, you know, at some point, we all may have to come together and say, you know what, this is our option. We may have to use that, we may have to increase those taxes to ensure that we get additional officers on the street.
So what is not for you, a tax hike is out of the question?
I prefer not to after we look and study everything on the table. I prefer not to. My colleagues have said over and over that they do not want to do that. They believe that we have the funds available to us.
The Fraternal Order of Police is considering whether or not to sue the city because they may not get their raises, but first they're going to hire someone to look at the city's books to see if there actually is money there. Do you believe that the city has money?
I believe that there's dollars available to us. I do. And I believe they've already hired someone to start that process.
And so why don't you and the mayor just go upstairs to pick a floor, 20th, 21st floor, and just come up with a deal, sit down and say it has to get done?
You know what? That would be fabulous, but I have not had any conversations with the mayor regarding the budget.
And so, but I mean, he's coming back. He cut his trip short from Europe, an economic trip. Any plans of you just sitting down with him and saying, look, let's just get this done. It's what's best for the city. No more of this tit for tat.
Once again, I'm going to say I have not had a conversation with the mayor regarding the budget. I would love to do that. I've had several conversations with the chief of staff, his controller. You know, we all work together well. And at the end of the day, I do believe that we'll come up with something.
Okay. So and I'm going to just press you on one more thing. Do you want the mayor to sit down with you? I mean, you have the airtime. Should the mayor sit down with you and say, listen, let's just hash out our differences and let's move forward?
If you, like you said, if there's a Lewis plan, there should be a mayor plan, and the two of us should sit down and have a conversation about the budget.
So I think the mayor should sit down with you. Is that what you're telling me?
That's exactly what I'm saying. We should sit down and have a conversation.
Ms. Lewis, thank you so much. Democrat, President of the City County Council. Please come back.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
After the break, much more. We're continuing our conversation on public safety, the budget with the mayor's chief of staff, Ryan Vaughn. Indianapolis This Week continues right after the break. The fight over the budget for public safety is something the mayor's office has been involved in and continues to push for, including expanded taxes to help fund IMPD. Joining us now is the chief of staff to Mayor Greg Ballard, Ryan Vaughn. He also served on the City County Council. Mr. Vaughn, thank you for joining us. First order of the day, of course, is the issue with the Officer Bradway. What are your thoughts as we all take moments to just think of that valiant life?
Well, the city is certainly grieving together for the loss, and I think it highlights not only the dangers that IMPD encounter every day in our community, but also the dangers presented by an ongoing domestic violence problem in our community that we need to continue to address.
This issue, of course, brought to the forefront public safety and the men and women who every day, whether they're wearing blue or brown, whether they're a county sheriff's deputy, face every day on the job. In the city of Indianapolis, we're having an issue of funding for police. Many reports say we need many officers. What's going to happen here? Will we have to raise taxes to get the officers?
You know, I don't think we do. The budget proposals that have been introduced and the compromise that has subsequently been discussed in some areas fund additional classes, 30 in April, an additional 50 in the fourth quarter of next year, so we can start to build this force back. That does call for the elimination of the homestead tax credit. And you don't see that as an increase in taxes, right? I don't, no. I mean,
and explain why.
Sure. So property tax owners, homeowners, well, constituents generally voted for a constitutional amendment that limit their property taxes not to exceed 1% of the value of their home. They acknowledge that that's a responsible threshold. They're willing to pay that, nothing more. The credit only affects those people who don't pay 1%, who pay under 1%. And so removing the credit, which is taking income tax dollars and using them to buy down someone's property tax bill, just moves those people who are under 1% up and takes the income tax dollars and puts them back in public safety. So it's fair to say that those people who are paying less than 1% potentially see a rise, but many of the residents who pay over 1%, well, none of the residents who pay over 1% would see any increase. And frankly, there's a lot of constituents out there who are not homeowners at all, who are currently paying income taxes and would rather see those income taxes go to support police than to support someone else's property tax bill.
We just heard from Council President Maggie Lewis, who believes that there is money somewhere in the city. Is there money? Are you sitting on some sort of pot of gold, or is there some fat in that budget that we don't know about?
There's not. We've been very judicious, both on my time on the council and in my time with the mayor's office, and managing through a very, very difficult economy. When we started the mayor's administration and when I started on the council, was really the beginning of the recession. You layer on top of that the implementation of property tax caps, which reduced our revenue, lower income tax collections, and then really a policy from the beginning that every time we adopt a budget, we're going to aim to spend 5% less than that. Year after year after year has had a compounding impact. We have spent down fund reserves over the course of those years in order to avoid reducing services, and there simply is not that magic pot of gold out there. If there were, I'd be happy to tap it.
And maybe I have a little flip on the pot of gold, but is there any line item, is there any fat in that budget that you could today go over and say, okay, I'm going to cross it out and I can put it to the police fund? There is no extra dollars somewhere or extra accounts that you can move over to a police fund?
I think the best example of this, which proves the case, is the exercise that Councilor Lewis and the mayor's office went through last year. You may recall that when the mayor vetoed the council's budget last year, we then subsequently reached an agreement in the following year. That agreement called for us to reduce $30 million in spending. That exercise you're talking about. Go through the budget, find all the fat, cut the expenses to get your expenditures to meet your revenues. That very bipartisan exercise, which all members of the council had an opportunity to participate in, over several months, every director, every county office, every agency within the city participated in, we were able to discover only $9 million that we could reduce, not 30, which we both mutually targeted, but only 9. And to be quite frank, only about 2.5 of that was a reoccurring savings. The others were just elimination of one-time expenses. So we are approaching this budget like we have every budget, with a scalpel to try and be as responsible in our spending as possible. But there's not that fluff anywhere in there that can be redirected.
President Lewis mentioned that she has yet to meet face-to-face with this city's CEO, the mayor, to discuss the budget. Should the council president meet with the mayor and say, look, let's talk on whichever floor she picks in the CCB, the city county building, and say, sure, let's sit down, let's get this resolved? Should that happen? Should there be a meeting of the minds in that kind of platform?
Well, I don't want to mischaracterize this. Councilor Lewis has never requested to meet with the mayor on this issue. The mayor is certainly available and willing to meet to discuss it.
Well, let me help you out. So on this program, just moments ago, she says she wants to meet with the mayor. So what does she have to do? So let's get this all, so we don't have to do this over and over again. What needs to happen so that these two leaders can get together and get it done?
Just that. They've met on many occasions. I don't know that they've met to discuss this budget, and there's never been a situation in which the mayor's desired to meet with her or she's desired to meet with the mayor where it's been refused. I don't know that the two have reached out to one another to talk about this particular budget, but that's not to say that there aren't significant discussions going on over this budget. The mayor has staff. I'm one of them. President Lewis has staff. Staff meet frequently. I've met with President Lewis. President Lewis has met with our controller. We have standing meetings on a weekly basis to discuss these issues. If she desires a meeting with the mayor or vice versa, that can happen very easily.
Let's call for a meeting. Mr. Vaughn, I thank you so much for your time. Please come back again. We appreciate your time.
I will.
And next, the fight over the Affordable Health Care Act and how it's pushing us closer to a possible government shutdown. Our political insiders weigh in on the politics playing out in Washington right after the break. The battle lines over a government shutdown have been drawn, with House Republicans passing a bill to block the Affordable Health Care Act. But it isn't just a battle between the White House and Republicans. It's a battle as well among the Republicans. Since House Speaker John Boehner announced a plan to pass the bill, Senate Republicans say they don't have the votes to pass it in their chamber. Now, that's outraging some House Republicans because the Senate refuses to fight for it, in their opinion. Even Republican strategist Karl Rove is warning the GOP through a Wall Street Journal opinion piece that it's a strategy that will only hurt the GOP. Democrats are warning the Republicans that all of this disarray is bad for the economy.
It's unconscionable to imagine that there are those in the Congress, and now apparently because he couldn't persuade them otherwise, the Speaker of the House has joined them, who believe that it is the right thing to do to threaten another recession over their ideological desire to defund or delay the Affordable Care Act.
Joining us now are two of our political insiders, Republican Jennifer Hollowell and Democrat Laura Beck. Are we in the middle of a GOP civil war?
Well, it appears to be. I'm not a member of the GOP, so I'll let Jen answer that question, but it appears like we might be.
No, we're certainly not. What you saw on Friday is House Republicans voting to fund government and defund Obamacare, which is exactly what they were sent to do. If you consider House Republicans, who were elected in the last 2 cycles, which makes up more than half the House, they were sent with a clear mission from voters in their district, and that was to repeal Obamacare. And that's exactly what they're leading the charge to do. So frankly, that makes a lot of sense. If you look at the bigger issue of Obamacare, it's losing steam. A recent poll showed that a majority of Americans oppose Obamacare. Their coalition is falling apart. The AFL-CIO met a national conference 2 weeks ago and passed a resolution urging the president to make changes to Obamacare. The AFL-CIO is the most Democrat, staunchly Obama organization I think you could find, and they have problems with Obamacare. Why? They're worried about affordability, accessibility, and they're worried about workers losing hours and being shifted to part-time, like you're seeing in all other places around the country, because employers can't deal with the mandates that the system would bring. So, I mean, it's a serious issue, and we're talking about the future of healthcare in our country, and it's important that we have this debate.
Well, I think that to me, one of the things that was really interesting about the is there a war, first of all, is that Senator McCain.
But is there a war?
Well, I think that clearly when Karl Rove, who's a standard bearer and who's a clear messenger for the Republican Party, comes out and says, hey, you know, this is becoming a losing issue for you, that's a sign. But even when Senator McCain comes out and says that it's a futile attempt, I think it's for the House Republicans, it's become a more symbolic attempt. And I think that's what, 41, 42, 40, how many times? 41?
It's been more than 40.
More than 40 times. And so yes, clearly there are some members, I'm sure there are some House members who feel very strongly, but there are others in this country who also feel strongly. There's 30 million Americans who will have access to health insurance who don't have it yet. And I think that's a pretty compelling number. Pre-existing conditions, for example. If you have a pre-existing condition, you can have health insurance. There's all of these different things that are a part of healthcare reform, which we're going to see take effect. So, but to stop government operations because of it, to me, is silly and it's irresponsible.
We're not talking about stopping government operations. What House Republicans did on Friday was fund government and defund Obamacare, which are both majority positions of the Americans. But let's talk about this war.
But the Senate is saying. But the Senate is saying no. The Senate is saying the Senate Republicans are saying let's put the brakes on this. Go ahead.
Let's talk about this war issue, because Republicans.
We'll get to the war in a second.
What she said.
Okay, finish.
Republicans are all for. Okay, they're united in wanting to repeal Obamacare.
But
the debate isn't about whether
people to have access to health insurance.
The debate isn't on the issue. The debate is about PR. And yes, it's a challenging political situation.
You guys are losing the PR war.
Can homeowners, can regular folks who really, they just want to get up in the morning and pay their bills, can they really deal with another threat of a government shutdown and other countries wondering what's happening in the United States? I mean, it just seems
when you start threatening,
I'm not finished with my question.
Sorry.
That's okay.
You're allowed to talk.
It's my show.
No, wait a minute.
It is my show.
When did it become your show?
As of now. Can we really afford as a country this battle when both sides just can't seem to get it together? I mean, it seems to me that we have a government shutdown every 6 months. Does that need to be resolved?
A threat of one.
Yeah. But that does affect the markets.
It affects the markets, but what it also does, though, is it's sort of like, you know, as a parent, you know, you are parents. When you're a parent, you know, when do you push it as far as you should push it? And if you keep pushing it as far as you push it with a kid, but you don't ever follow up on it, you have no teeth. And I think every time they come out and they threaten a government shutdown, it looks so silly. I mean, it's now gotten to the point where the Affordable Care Act has been held up by the Supreme Court. Where else are you going to go?
There are Democrats who are opposed to Obamacare. The AFL-CIO wants to see changes.
Can we afford a government shutdown?
Can we afford to have all these people sent to part-time jobs because employers can't afford insurance? Can we afford driving up costs, which is exactly what this would do? I agree that we need to find a solution, but let's find a solution that works, that a majority of Americans can support. And that is not what this Obamacare is.
The reason why the Republicans are so pushing against it is it's because this is President Obama's initiative. And I understand that there are members of the House who have been elected to Washington, but President Obama was elected in 2008 and then re-elected
to try to make changes. Republicans are seeking compromise. The president.
We have 15 seconds.
The president won't compromise.
We have 15 seconds. Will there be a government shutdown, yes or no, or is this just a whole bunch of theater?
I hope not. I really hope not, because it means a lot of people aren't going to get the benefits they need, like veterans and seniors.
Not if the Senate passes the House bill.
They do like each other. They really do. Our political insiders, we do appreciate your time. You can catch all of them on our blog, and our conversation between our insiders doesn't end here. We have a lot to say. You can join them also on Twitter. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion. And you can stay up with Kip and Abdul, Lara, and Jennifer throughout the week. Indianapolis This Week continues after the break. This week, tragedy hit Metro Police in Indianapolis. Officer Rod Bradway was killed after responding to a domestic dispute. And officers tell us that Bradway was not just a hero on the job, but a family man who gave back to others. Our TV6 reporter Julie Persley has more.
Officer Bradway was a 5-year veteran of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. Fellow officers say he was a man dedicated to his job and his family. He leaves behind a wife and 2 teenage children. Officer Bradway was highly decorated. In fact, he was just awarded the IMPD Medal of Bravery. Officer Bradway helped people here in Indy and beyond. This year, he and his wife organized a drive and helped collect pet and veterinary supplies for victims of the Moore, Oklahoma tornado. Officer Bradway was injured earlier this year. He was on duty in a squad car when police say he was hit by a drunk driver. Fellow officers say he was a man proud to put on the uniform daily as he put his life on the line for the people of Indianapolis.
He is a true hero in every sense of the word, and he was dedicated to this community, lived in this community, served this community, and unfortunately gave the ultimate sacrifice.
Other officers thought very highly of Bradway. He was named Officer of the Month back in February.
Our thoughts and condolences with the family of Officer Bradway. Stay with RTV6 for continuing coverage. I'm Rafael Sanchez. Have a great weekend.